Welcome to the Hadean Eon, also known as Hades Hell, named after the god of the underworld as shown above. Here is where everything in life began, about 4.65 billion years ago. It was a very dangerous time, with molten spewing everywhere, like the picture shown here. The atmosphere had no oxygen in it, and there were very hot temperatures. Life was known to have emerged during this time, and it ended about 3.8 billion years ago. We are now entering the room called the Toxic Tomb, representing the Archean Eon, which began 3.8 billion years ago. This was a time with many volcanoes that were exploding while releasing toxic gases such as methane and ammonia, as you can see above. The protocontinents, also known as the seeds for the upcoming supercontinents, were known to have formed during this time. It came to an end around 2.5 billion years ago, which led to the start of the Proterozoic Eon. Next, we will be entering the snowball slide room, representing the Proterozoic Eon, which began about 2.5 billion years ago. Here was where the supercontinent of Rodinia, shaped as shown here, was formed about 1.2 billion years ago by the cooling of the very hot magma that was emitted through the volcanoes during the Archean Eon. The land was completely covered in ice with freezing temperatures. This allowed for very little life, in fact almost none, with a simple bacteria like unicells being the only living things here. This eon came to an end about 542 million years ago, which led to the start of the Phanerozoic Eon. We are now entering Earth's explosion room from the Cambrian period, which began about 542 million years ago. This was a significant time which began with the Cambrian explosion, with new life forms that had never been seen before, which increased biodiversity. Trilobites, brachiopods, algae, and many new animals had shown up. You can see a list of some of them here. Also, in the next picture, you can see how the ocean is filled with many organisms. This explosion was a big step in life and greatly set up the stage for the next years to come. It ended about 488 million years ago. Welcome to the Great Glaciers room, which represents the Ordovician period, which began about 488 million years ago. This was a time of biodiversity increasing on land and water, as well as when the southern supercontinent of Gondwana formed. You can see a picture of a seal in water here with very shallow waters, which was very dangerous because water was necessary for their survival. Massive glaciers formed here when Gondwana settled on the South Pole and on the sea. The sea became very shallow with a lot of drainage, which greatly affected the marine life because all of the water got sucked up into the glaciers, like the picture shown here. 60% of marine life was wiped out and became extinct. This time period ended around 444 million years ago. We are now in the melting pot area, which represents the Silurian period, which began about 444 million years ago. This was a time in which Earth underwent many changes, in which many of these were caused by the melting of glaciers. The melting of glaciers, as you can see in this picture, caused sea levels to rise and also led to a stable climate, which ended the previous pattern of an unstable climate and was a very good thing. Coral reefs showed up for the first time, as you can see here, and many fish species evolved. This period ended about 416 million years ago. Welcome to the forestation floor room representing the Devonian period, which began about 416 million years ago. During this time, the first trees and forests had began, as you can see in the picture above. It was also the first time that land-living vertebrates had been seen. The evolution of fishes continued into this time, and it ended about 359 million years ago. Next up is the reptiles residence, representing the Carboniferous period, which began about 359 million years ago. It was during this time that the amniotic egg had been seen and used for the first time. The amniotic egg allowed reptiles to have the ability to lay eggs on land without the fear of drying out. Birds, mammals, and reptiles had the ability now to lay eggs on land because of the fluid-filled egg that allowed the embryo to survive while supplying it food and water, which was a very important step in Earth's history. This influenced many other animals and increased biodiversity on land. You can see this amniotic egg shown in the picture above. The Carboniferous period ended about 299 million years ago. Although it may sound like the Carboniferous period was a stage set up for an even better time to come, the total opposite happened. Welcome to the graveyard, also known as the Permian period, which began 299 million years ago. It was during this time that the largest mass extinction ever recorded in life happened on Earth, which wiped out about 96% of marine life and 70% of land life. You can see a picture of some of these dead and extinct reptiles above. Sadly, these animals would never have the same dominance like that ever again. However, the doors opened up for other animals to have a chance to dominate, such as dinosaurs, which we will learn about later. Glaciers continued to melt, which continued to shift the climate, and the continents started to dry. This period came to an end around 251 million years ago and began the Triassic period. Welcome to the Pangaea's land room, representing the Triassic period beginning 251 million years ago. This was mainly a time of transition in which the supercontinent of Pangaea existed. The supercontinent of Pangaea forming altered the climate and the ocean circulation. You can see a picture of the supercontinent of Pangaea shown above. Mountains formed on the continent of Pangaea, and towards the end of the Triassic period, Pangaea began breaking apart because of the tectonic movements. North Africa split away from Europe, and eastern North America split away from North Africa. The Triassic period ended about 199.5 million years ago. We are now entering one of my favorite rooms here, called Dinosaurs Dynasty, representing the Jurassic period, which began about 199.5 million years ago. Have you ever heard of the movie Jurassic Park with all of the dinosaurs? Well, this greatly represents the Jurassic period. Plant-eating dinosaurs, as shown in the picture here, were dominant during this time, as well as the oceans were full of fish, carnivores were many on land, and the first birds were seen during this time. The biodiversity of many animals spread again during this time, and it ended about 145.5 million years ago. Up next is the magnificent Mesozoic room, representing the Cretaceous period beginning 145.5 million years ago. New dinosaur species continued to appear, but these would be their last years on Earth. The first plants with flowers, as shown here in this picture, began during this time. Also, scientists were able to find the first fossils of many modern insects, mammals, and birds from during this time. This period ended about 65.5 million years ago. We are now entering the maturing mammals room, representing the Paleogene period beginning about 65.5 million years ago. The continents continued to drift further apart towards their modern positions as they are today. Many seaways drained as the climates cooled and dried, and it was a time with rapidly evolving mammals. Many new grazing mammals appeared during this time, such as bison, shown in the picture here, were found in the grasslands of North America, as well as whales appeared, as shown here, in the oceans for the first time. The wonderful Paleogene period came to an end around 23 million years ago. Found in the faulting field room is the Neogene period, which began 23 million years ago. Earth's crust was faulted, stretched, thinned, and lifted during this time, which led to the formation of mountains and many other landforms. These landforms altered the weather patterns, and ocean circulations. Monkeys became popular and common during this time, as you can see in the picture above. The Neogene period came to an end around 2.5 million years ago. The last room we are visiting today is the human hull, representing the Quaternary period in which we are currently in and began 2.5 million years ago. Humans were brought to Earth during this time, as represented by the human doll, as you can see here. Technology increased during this time and the continents shifted into their current positions. There is not much new information to be learned about the Quaternary period, except that it was during this period that Earth had changed and undergone the specific changes in order to get to the present day position and life that we are living in now. Thank you for taking the time to come with me on a virtual tour through history from 4.65 billion years ago until now. I hope you had fun and that you learned a lot with me. Stop in again soon or whenever you'd like to the Geologic Timescale Museum.